identifying it. We identify it for the sake of putting it out there. Staff is not recommending providing that cost of living increase to the employees.
And then my next question is, you said that there was a difference between if council members for a certain amount of years were here, they would get retirement benefits. Would you point that out on the page, please?
No,
That page 6 of 11?
I'm not sure if we're working from the same pages.
Oh,
Like you, I
you're
was
right.
working from the last meeting, but I will identify in the staff report the page number associated with the staff report, because I don't think that changed. But on page 6 of 11, that would be the first reference that I see highlighted in yellow.
Where is particularly just the number of amounts that council members need to be council members before they opt in?
Yeah, and effectively this identifies that council members are PERS eligible. And the detail of that, Mr. Vino can do a lot better job than I at explaining that.
Well, and let me rectify my question, because it's not CalPERS. CalPERS is something all employees get, and I'm considered, and all of you are considered an employee, even though sometimes we're said we're not employees, so it changes. But not in terms of CalPERS, but because I know Councilmember Cox has a retirement where he draws money from here as an employee who retired, and that's what I was talking about, not necessarily CalPERS. I think there's a division between CalPERS, mandatory, versus opting in as a council member. But you can clarify that.
And this was intended to help clarify the distinction between employees and council members. For the sake of retirement, it's the same CalPERS program, but we did bring clarity because apparently there had been confusion in the past that because we didn't have this clarification of treating the council members as council members, there was an interpretation that the council members were employees, which the council members are not employees, but they are PERS eligible. So we did provide that correction in here to bring clarity to the difference between employees and council members. But it is effectively the same CalPERS program that we as an employees are benefiting from.
Yes, good evening, Madam Mayor, members of the council. That is correct. That is the same program, the same formula, which is a 2.5% at age 55. But it is the distinction between the employees and council members is that the council members do have the option of opting out of that retirement program. In many cases it's because they are already receiving retirement benefits, and therefore they don't qualify to continue receiving that benefit.
And then my final question is, why, if this is synonymous to the budget at a hearing, why didn't we adopt this document with the adopted budget as a hearing, but we're doing it instead as a written communication? And that response is something legal that I would like to understand. There's a difference between a public hearing and a written communication with just general public comments and items of this nature.
Not synonymous with the budget. Companion was my descriptor to this item, and different in the sense that this is defining your personnel program in terms of number of positions, in terms of types of benefits that are available. Different than the actual budget, in that the actual budget serves as the planning document that effectively is the expenditure plan. So the actual cost associated with this item gets translated into the budget, and the budget is the actual spending plan. This is a slightly different item. I say companion because you really need the two to be working together to make the fiscal operation work, but they are two separate items.
Thank you. I have no further questions.
Do you have any questions?
Yes, I do. Okay, I noticed that we have a total of 14 positions deleted. I would like to know how much money does that represent in terms of the 14 deleted positions? How much money is that? Does anyone have an answer? The reason why I'm asking all this is that if you look at the deleted positions of 14, then I want to know also, what did it cost for you to add 10 more positions? which only actually means that you change 4. I want to know the difference in the fiscal cost because the budget is short almost $5 million. Where does these so-called positions fall within the $5 million? Because our budget is not balanced. And so I would like to know how our city manager determines the adding of 10 jobs, deleting 14, and still have a deficit of almost $5 million.
Well,
Please answer the question.
the answer, I don't have the exact cost in front of us right now. That's something that we can follow up with
Well,
you.
give me an approximation of how much money did you save by deleting 14 positions?
I can't do that right now because the positions that we're talking about are funded over multiple funds, and this city budget comprises about 81 funds. So it would take a little bit of effort to identify the exact cost associated with the 14 and then the addition of the 10. But that's something that we
Okay.
can provide
Then answer
separate.
the question. How much, in terms of the 10 added positions, how much money does that add to the budget?
The answer is the same. I'll have to follow up with you. I don't have that in front of me at this time. That likely is a part of the actual budget that we approved at the last meeting. But we can follow up with you on that. I will correct one statement in that that you made in that is that the budget is balanced. It's you had stated it's not balanced, but it is balanced, and it is balanced relying on available
Okay.
cash.
Then my next question is, when you have deleted a position and you added another one, is that an actual new position or simply the same job with a new title?
Many of them are reclassifications.
Okay, reclassifications. Okay. Now, in that reclassification, under this reorganizational table that you have given us, then that goes with, is it similar to the one previously, or is it totally different?
I would say it's similar.
In other words, if I was looking up a job, if I was looking up the deleted job and look for the added job, would I have to look at both of them, or could I just look at the one that you're giving us today?
Well, this item actually identifies where we make those changes, and you can kind of compare on the one document. I believe it is attachment 1, and you can you can track fairly well where the reclassifications occur. And if you really wanted to do a deep dive to understand the difference, you'd actually have to pull up the job descriptions to see the difference in responsibility that has been taken on by the new position. And that's not uncommon. We have to evaluate on an annual basis all of the job classifications that we have. We have to compare the actual duties that the employee is performing and make sure they're still working in their job classification. And so part of this exercise is identifying through the addition and deletion process where reclassifications need to occur. I'm sorry.
Okay. My last question has to deal with public works, with the water department. I noticed that it was the only one where there was no added job. Everything was deleted. There were 4 positions deleted. Can you explain that to me?
I'm going to ask.
On public works, water department, I noticed that there were 4 positions that were deleted, and it turned out it was the only one where you didn't add anything or add a new position. Is there a reason for it?
There is a reason for it, and I'll allow Deputy City Manager Sophie Smith address your question.
The 4 positions deleted from the Public Works Department were based on meetings with the department head, Mr. Matthews from that department. who analyzed each position as they were vacated by others who had either left the city, retired, or moved on to another position. And as he's required to do as people leave, he had to reevaluate whether or not there was a need to backfill those positions. And based on his recommendation, those positions are being requested to not be refilled.
Okay,
Backfilled.
so this was a recommendation by the head of the water department?
Correct.
Okay, thank you very much.
Other questions, Rita?
No, that would be all for now. Thank you.
Madam Mayor, I have a follow-on question, if I may. So I know the answer to this, but I'm going to go ahead and ask it for the benefit of our audience, Mr. Metzler. So when a position is deleted, it doesn't mean that we've terminated the employee, correct?
That is correct.
All right. It's just that it's just really an administrative kind of task where we don't believe that we have a need to fill the position again, and so we just clean it from our books. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Thank you, Mr. Metzler.
I don't have any questions.
I don't have any questions. Thank you.
A motion and a second for item 8.
Yes, Madam Mayor, I move that the City Council take action in accordance with the recommendations set out on the agenda.
Second.
I have a motion by Councilmember Jones, seconded by Councilmember Cox. Any further comments?
Yes, so the only part that I happen to disagree vehemently is literally the table of organization for obvious reasons that I've experienced personally with two particular employees that are sitting right in front of you, which is Miss Sophie and Janelle Davison. You know, to me, what is happening right here, yeah, and I do name call and I do that because to me, I'm very frank with the things that happen. I think this table of reorganization, what it's doing is really giving an incentive for people who are not just rude, belligerent, but straight out uncourteous to our community. And personally, when I've helped customers in the different areas of the departments as a councilwoman, having to vouch for them, I have personally dealt with these two women in very uncourteous manners. And so to me, the way that these women get incentivized
Madam
is
Mayor, I'm
by
going to
the
make a
city
point of
manager
order. This has nothing
being
to do
able to
with the
have this.
motion
So
before
I
the council.
disagree completely
Ms. Gomez?
with this portion. And you can see as I
Ms.
speak,
Gomez?
they want to shut me down. And that's all I need to say. Thank you very much.
Madam Mayor, it has a point of order. It has nothing to do with shutting someone down. It has to do with following the procedures that we've all agreed to follow. And that parliamentary rule means that we only speak to agenda items.
Ms.
And then
Jones,
once a
you're not
motion
the
is made, we only
parliamentarian.
speak and
That's
to
the
the
role
motion.
of the chair, not your role.
I'm speaking to the Madam Mayor, and
It's her role to call attention, not yours.
Ms. Gomez is out of line as usual.
There you go. You had to do it again.
Indeed.
You don't sound professional, just like I don't.
I will continue. We're on item number 9.
I gotta take a vote. Motion by Councilmember Jones, seconded by Councilmember Cox. Councilmember Cox?
Yes.
Councilmember Gomez?
Nay.
Councilmember Jones?
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Ramirez?
Yes.
Mayor Garcia?
Yes.
Motion passes with Councilmember Gomez voting no.
Now we move on to item number 9. California Fire Assistance Agreement. Madam Clerk, read the recommendation.
That the City Council adopt resolution number 20-030 and rescind resolution number 19-040 as recommended by California Office of Emergency Services.
Thank you. Council members, 3 minutes. If you have any questions, starting with Mr. Cox.
I don't have any questions at this time. Thank you.
Ms. Jones?
No, thank you, Madam Mayor.
Rita?
No.
Gomez?
None for Mr. Benson today.
I have none. So do we have any speaker cards? None. This time I need a motion and a second for item number 9.
Madam Mayor, move staff recommendation, adopt resolution 20-030, which would rescind resolution also, rescind 19.040.
Second.
I have a motion by Councilmember Cox, seconded by Mayor Garcia. Any further comments? Councilmember Cox?
Aye.
Councilmember Gomez?
Aye.
Councilmember Jones?
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Ramirez?
Aye.
Mayor Garcia?
Aye.
Passes unanimously.
Now we move on to item number 10. Local guidelines for vehicle miles traveled. A threshold of significance for purpose of analyzing transportation impacts under the California Environmental Quality Act. Madam Clerk, please read the recommendation.
That the City Council find that the adoption of VMT thresholds are exempt under Section 15378B5 of the California Environmental Quality Act guidelines and adopt resolution number 20-031 approving local guidelines for vehicle miles traveled, thresholds of significance for purposes of analyzing transportation impacts.
Thank you. Council members, 3 minutes for questions. Ms. Jones?
No, thank you, Madam Mayor.
Not at this time. The County Transportation Commission, which I'm a member, has had this on their agenda and taken action, and I'd like to speak later after the City Council has had the opportunity to speak on it.
Thomas?
Yeah, do we have a committee within the council that sits to be a participant of any decisions that are made within the VMT?
Sorry, I didn't hear you.
My question is, if we have any council member that participates in the committee to be able to do any kind of decision-making processes for this particular item that we're talking about.
Madam Mayor and members of the council, I would say the answer to that is yes, in the sense that the council has approved 2 members to serve, one member and an alternate to serve the CTC, the former Sandbag Transportation Commission. But as it relates to staff's role in this particular item, this is a state law, state requirement, so we've been required to conform to it. It's been a staff-initiated effort in companion with coordinated efforts with CTC, but also involving the Planning Commission.
Thank you. No further questions.
Rita, do you have any questions?
No. No, thank you.
I have none.
Yes, if the council would like to entertain a presentation, I have a few slides to go through. Well, good evening, Mayor, council members. Since we have 2 items today, speaking about VMT, I wanted to go through some slides to give you an overview and hopefully answer some questions throughout the presentation that you may have. I want to go over the Senate bill, obviously, how it's evolved into the vehicle miles traveled as the metrics to analyze traffic impacts, and then also discuss the proposed thresholds of significance that we have included in the resolution that you're considering adopting today. CEQA is ever evolving, and Senate Bill 743 is no exception. The state legislature over the years has focused on greenhouse gas reduction, also tribal consultations as part of the CEQA process. So developers that have new projects that are coming through, they're subject to new state laws, and so what we want to do is make sure that our city is up to par with the latest state requirements, and if there's any discretion that the city has, that we put those in place, and that's what's before you today with establishing thresholds of significance for VMT. Just to give you some background on this actual Senate bill, the main intent of this legislation is to promote infill development, also promote public health through active transportation, reducing the reliance on individual vehicles, also reducing greenhouse gas emissions. Senate Bill 743 was adopted in 2013, and it actually does not dictate that we use vehicle miles traveled. It dictates that we abandon the auto delay method of analyzing traffic impacts, which we've done historically. So levels of service, where we analyze if an intersection needs to be widened. If that project created that impact, that project would be held to those type of mitigations to widen that intersection so traffic would free flow. So following the adoption of Senate Bill 743, the Governor's Office of Planning and Research took on developing a metrics of how we're going to abandon this auto delay traffic analysis, and what they arrived at was vehicle miles traveled after they analyzed other methods of analyzing traffic. And then the Office of Natural Resources adopted that into CEQA guidelines in 2018, and state and local agencies are required to implement vehicle miles traveled starting July 1st of this year. And so, as I was mentioning, you're probably wondering what is the main change, and that is the change from the auto delay that we've historically done to the VMT analysis. Now that I've led into this, you're probably asking yourself, what is VMT? So we have a quick little video here that'll give you some background on that.
What is VMT? VMT, or vehicle miles traveled, refers to the distance that a car travels regardless of how many passengers are in the car. So this car, traveling 1 mile, would generate 1 VMT, and 4 vehicles, traveling 10 miles, would generate 40 VMT. To understand how much VMT a person generates on a typical weekday, it's useful to map their travel throughout the day. In this example, Jess starts the day at home, drives to the coffee shop 2 miles away, and then heads to work, which is 10 miles from the coffee shop. After a day at the office, Jess returns home 11 miles away. Later, Jess heads out and drives 1 mile to the gas station to fill up, before driving another 3 miles to the grocery store, and then makes the 2-mile trip back home. By adding together the miles driven, it is shown that Jess has generated 29 VMT for the entire day. This VMT can be further categorized into the individual trip purposes that motivated each leg of the trip. VMT can be organized into 3 typical trip purposes: home to work, or HW, home to other, or HO, and other to other, or OO. This organization is helpful in understanding that trips to and from work tend to generate the most VMT because people are willing to drive longer distances as the benefit of the trip increases. Do you have other questions about VMT that you would like answered? Let us know.
All right, so you could see they were discussing the benefit of the trip. And we have a lot of people who become residents that, because of the benefit of owning a home further out where they can afford it, the benefit of the trip for them is actually a longer commute. You could see how VMTs would impact a city such as Victorville a little bit more than a city that's around a job center, but because those residents aren't driving as far to get to their place of business or to a shopping center. So now to just give you an overview of how we comply with this new legislation. We've worked with SBCTA, and they've worked with a lot of the local municipalities within San Bernardino County to develop standard model for traffic impacts related to VMT. So traffic engineers, as new projects can come up, they can use this model, traffic model, that SBCTA's consultant has put together. And this process has started back in 2019, and they've also put together screening tables, recommended thresholds of significance for cities to consider, And so before you today is that threshold of significance that we as a city can implement to essentially exempt some smaller projects. What you're considering today is smaller projects based on substantial evidence that we have of record, that those projects don't raise themselves to a level of significance where they're making an impact on the environment. So what I wanted to show is a comparison here of what the State Office of Planning and Research has put out as a technical advisory on what their thresholds of significance are. And these are arbitrary in nature. They don't relate back to the state legislature's goal of reducing greenhouse gases. They arbitrarily picked a categorical exemption of a 10,000 square foot building and based their traffic counts off of that. And then they added some other uses in there that maybe local serving that wouldn't generate as many VMTs because they're surrounded by local residents. So just to give you a perspective here, the technical advisory that OPR put out listed projects up to 110 daily trips. That essentially equates to 10 homes. So any subdivider that would be coming to the city that had more than 10 homes, if we relied on OPR's technical advisory, all of those developers would have to do a VMT analysis for every project. Likewise, any shopping center over 50,000 square foot, they would have to go through this VMT analysis. And then in working with a traffic consultant in Translutions, they actually equated what we're proposing as thresholds of significance to the actual metric tons of greenhouse gas that our local air quality management districts consider a significant impact. So they took all the metric tons of greenhouse gas, the CO2 that's created each year that they consider a significant impact, and they equated that to the amount of dwelling units, square footage of development, as you can see here. So if your project goes over 136 dwelling units, that's equated to going over the amount of metric tons of CO2 greenhouse gases that are produced. So there's a clear nexus. It's based on substantial evidence, and we support moving forward with this resolution to adopt thresholds of significance for the city of Victorville. And we would also like to outline that this was also brought forward to the Planning Commission in a public hearing. We also reached out to commercial and residential industry reps who are supportive of this, of Victorville creating their own thresholds, which a lot of cities are doing. And we see no issue with moving forward with the resolution. I would like to point out that there is another item, item 15, on your agenda. Staff also supports the council if they choose to adopt that as well, because as city staff, we do have concerns with implementing VMT. Even though we've gone through the motions, we've done our homework, we are concerned with the impact that will have on our residents. We feel that it disproportionately impacts communities such as ours that have higher rates of poverty, where they're forced to commute further. It would stampen the potential growth that we could have in our city. And there's also concerns about viable mitigation measures. If a project has an impact and cannot mitigate their VMTs, they would have to go through an environmental impact report. The city council would have to adopt a statement of overriding consideration, or the developer would have to be creative and find some way to lower their VMTs. And that hasn't been fully vetted yet. At the state level, there's confusion on how these projects could be brought down to a level of less than significance. It all relates back to that level of certainty. You know, developers need that level of certainty when they come and try to develop in a city. And if we can't give them that up front, there's repercussions because they may end up going to another city that may not have the same VMT impacts that our city has due to our location. So with that, I'm here to answer any questions you may have, and also our city engineer is here as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Oh, you do? Okay.
I also have questions for Mr. Webb.
I might be getting a little ahead of myself before going to 15, where they want to postpone the BMT statistics or numbers or whatever you need to create for businesses in the miles cap. But I see they're very hypothetical numbers because there's really no guarantee what they were showing if the person is really going to drive to the store that distance, and it's really going to accumulate those miles traveled per person. It's all hypothetical. I know people go to work, go to the store, but times are changing real quickly now. I'm not going to the store. I'm having stuff delivered to me now. I know that creates another different, the VMT for the person's delivering the product, but not actually the person actually working in the city, because you have a lot of people from outside the city coming over here to deliver the product for us. Not all the people that do DoorDash and the cart things live here. Some people live in other cities. So how does that impact the cities here? And for funding, I guess you really need to know the numbers exactly so you can proportionate those numbers for for miles traveled, for pollution is what you're trying to change over from one listing to a different listing to VMT. I saw the videos. I saw it 2 times. I understand what they're trying to do, make it more articulate, more easy to create, more concise. But it's all hypothetical, because there's really no guarantee that I'm going to drive 2 miles to the store, or 4 miles, or 5 miles. How do you justify that? Do you have questionnaires to send to people to see exactly how they're driving? That's my question. And if this is going to generate a cost for the city, for me, and I don't really think it's, unless you can really show me exactly how this benefits, and especially now in these times, which they've said Harvard says that approximately this condition is going to last maybe another 12 months, how we're living right now. So maybe explain the VMT in more of a theory than actual numbers on that. See, that's what throws me off on that part. Thank you.
Thank you. I do need a motion in a second.
If I can't speak as a council member, I'm going to go ahead and take my time as a public commenter.
We haven't come to comments, I already bypassed the questions, so.
Oh, okay.
I move the adoption of resolution number 20-031.
Second.
I have a motion by Councilmember Cox, seconded by Mayor Garcia. Any further comments?
Yeah, so if you witnessed, we had time to inquire, but we had the presentation after. if we had the presentation first, then comments with inquiries, I would be able to ask Scott Webb right now any clarification, just like Mr. Ramiro came up and wanted clarification. So what happens now is I'm not going to get my questions answered in front of the public. That bothers me because we are being told to reappropriate funding for a consultant of $125,000 pay, but yet I heard that we don't want to go with the VMT because it impacts us in matters with our disadvantaged populations. So it just, I'm left not being able to understand why there's a recommendation of appropriate, but then can we go ahead and change it later? Like, it doesn't make any sense to have a presentation after when council members have questions. Like, if I wasn't able to speak, I was gonna get up, just go speak in front and literally be a public just like all of you would. That's unfair. That's not a way that we should be doing business here. And yes, I'm disgruntled right now. That's not the way we should be doing business. We need more of you to speak up. Start listening to what we're talking about and you'll see how this is happening. I'm very upset right now at the way we're approaching this. No one's gonna answer my questions right now, but because it's public comment. So where's my authority to let the people know what's going on? Thank you.
Yes, Madam Mayor, this is not the public comment period. This was the period where people can comment after the motion's been made. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Oh, I'd like to hear what her questions are. I mean,
Well, no, because nobody's going to answer them. Nobody ever answers them during public comment. It's me talking to myself on the wall. So I can say, what are the impacts that the disadvantaged individuals would have by implementing VMT based on Senate Bill 73? One of them was said that they would impact because supposedly they would have to travel longer distances. But I don't understand how they would travel longer distances. What are we comparing a CPI with? I mean, I don't know. And why appropriate monies now if staff feels that this is not something valuable? Those are questions that aren't going to be answered. So they're just left for the record.
Madam Mayor, members of the council, if I might, just to bring clarity, because I think there was a misstatement there in that this item was requesting an appropriation of funds, and this particular item does not ask for an appropriation of funds, and in fact the fiscal impact identified for this staff report is none. And I think more so, to be clear, it doesn't directly affect the city in terms of cost or cost of service. This is a mechanism that's used to evaluate the environmental side of a proposed development. And effectively, it serves as an added form of mitigation required by the developer to be allowed to build a project. Saying it differently, I think it's safe to say that once this is in place, the developer is to comply with this provision are likely going to have added cost to satisfy the mitigation requirements. That added cost basically gets factored into the cost to build, and as it becomes more expensive to build because of requirements like this, then I think Scott Webb's comments as to the disadvantaged communities, it makes, say, affordable housing that much more difficult to achieve, if you will. So I think that's more so the relationship to what Mr. Webb had said. But I think it's important to note that's not a direct cost or impact to us. It does have the potential to slow down growth, especially if the mitigation calculates to be so expensive, so onerous to where that makes a project infeasible. But this is not directly related to a cost to the city, so I thought I'd bring that to your attention.
And Mr. Mesler, I didn't misunderstand and I didn't misquote. I actually read where it says recommendation to the city council to approve an additional appropriation of 125,000 such and such. So I didn't make a mistake. So I need to correct you for the record. Thank you.
Yeah, Madam Mayor, I'm at a loss on that.
Yeah, of course. I mean, let's stop ganging out up on me. Remember, I went up to the I mean, it's right here. I mean, if anybody wants to take a picture, I'm reading it verbatim. Recommendation that the city council approve an additional appropriations of 100. I mean, I don't know why I'm questioned. It's in the agenda. It's here. I'm not trying to be the troublemaker. I'm just telling you, when you respond to me in a disrespectful manner saying that I'm wrong, remember, it's right here. Yes, that's the item that's why I was asking of the confusion of the VMT or whatever it is. But I'm
That
not.
is not the recommendation,
not-
Madam Mayor.
I'm not the center spot. Well, anyways, that's why I'm telling you, this feels like a total attack, and it shouldn't be. Okay? It shouldn't be.
On the wrong
Even if
item
you're
all the
laughing,
time.
Mr. Harriman, you're the worst person that could be over here. Okay? You don't even know. Okay? You don't even know what's going on. Okay? You're just another racist man coming in here. That's all you are.
Okay,
We've
that's
called you
enough.
racism
Ms.
all
Gomez.
this time for what you've been doing. Okay?
Okay, I will not allow this.
Well, then don't allow him to speak to me either. This is where we stop this man from talking to council. But nobody shut him up because he's a white man, just like Maggie Martin when she's here. Okay? Well, that's why the chair needs to say, I'm sorry, please be quiet or you will leave the room. No, but if it was anybody else, we would have said, get out of here right now. I've witnessed this for 4 years. I'm tired of it.
Okay, I'm calling a recess, 5-minute recess. I'm not gonna put up with this. Okay, we will resume our meeting here. Is this on? Can you hear me back there? Can you hear me?
Yes?
Very good. Thank you, Rita. We're still on item 10, and I believe we were done with comments unless, Jim, did you have a comment on this one?
No, the staff covered it because I just wanted for the council to understand the distinction between item 10 and I think it's 14 or 15. To ask that the matter be continued, but it wasn't to have it discontinued. This is to be adopted, but it's the implementation totally different. But I wanted to make sure I explained that in case there was some confusion. So.
Thank you. Rita, did you have any comments on this item?
No, thank you.
Ms. Jones?
No, thank you, Madam Mayor.
And I don't have any, so we need a vote.
I do have the motion by Councilmember
But I
Cox.
do have comments on this item.
Well, you just spoke.
I think I have a time allotment. Did my time run out? I was speaking, you're right.
I think she had already,
Because it wasn't called out.
Still has time.
okay.
Yeah, you know, as I really try to make an understanding of these concepts, it's really difficult when the lack of decorum in this city with all of us doesn't allow me to ask certain questions about items that I'm truly asking. Believe me, I'm not here to debunk anybody, but with this item, as just commenting, I think it's just uncalled for. As city elected officials, we have every right within our allotted time to give us the full scope of the time. It wasn't given to me. I shouldn't fight for my time. I shouldn't say I still have time. This is not a dictatorship. So please, just respect my time. Many people don't like what I have to say. Many do. There's a reason why I'm up here, and I can express myself. That's all I want to say for this comment, since we had a recess for it.
I have a motion by Councilmember Cox, seconded by Mayor Garcia. Call for the vote. Councilmember Cox?
Yes.
Councilmember Gomez?
Aye.
Councilmember Jones?
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Ramirez?
Yes.
Mayor Garcia?
Aye.
Passes unanimously.
Now we move on to item 11. HR Green Pacific, Inc., Professional Services Agreement Amendment, number 2. Madam Clerk, please read the recommendation.
That the City Council approve an additional appropriation of $125,000 to fund 100, the general fund for on-call plan and map checking services, and approve amendment number 2 to the consultant professional services provider agreement with HR Green Pacific by an amount not to exceed of $125,000 for on-call plan and map check services.
Thank you. At this time, council members, you have 3 minutes to ask questions. And this one is referring to the $125,000. So I'll start with Ms. Gomez.
Yeah, so a lot of community has asked why we still kind of use consulting as bringing in salary paid individuals. I know a lot of us are new here, and so an explanation would be beneficial, because do we have someone that can be salaried at the amount, or various people that we can, or do we have that demand, or is it just necessary in status quo to continue on consulting on just different external firms and not in-house?
Madam Mayor and members of the council, this item was authorized by City Engineer Brian Gangler, and I'm going to ask him to come up to answer or fill in some of the blanks that perhaps I can't answer. But to answer the question directly, we do have staff, full-time staff, that is on the payroll providing similarly natured services. However, this is one of those areas where, because it's directly related to development, and there's ebbs and flows with respect to the volume of plan check associated with development, we monitor closely, and we establish a staffing level based upon a baseline amount of work we are confident is going to be there. However, for those um, for those spikes in activity, as is what we're currently experiencing, it's much more prudent for us to consider using a consultant that's easier for us to ramp up and ramp down those services that are required above and beyond what our full-time staff can handle. And I say that because if the comparison were, or if the desire were by the council to just have all full-time staff to handle the highest peak demand of service, you know, the risk that we find ourselves in is with a downturn in development and not as much work, not as much plan check activity to review, you effectively could find yourself in a position where you have full-time staff with not enough work to do. So it's a balancing act on our part from the staffing perspective. But I'd like City Engineer Brian Gangler to speak to this item in better detail, because I believe you saw a similarly natured item in April doing a similarly natured thing, and I'd like for him to explain why this item is coming back.
We do have a small development review staff that can do in-house plan check. One of them is fully dedicated to that as far as improvement plans. We have another, we also have staff, the city surveyor and his assistant, primarily the city surveyor, who checks track maps and parcel maps. But the workload is too great for those individuals. And so for the last few years, there's been enough plan and map check activity that we need an outside resource, and we've used HR Green. We never know what the level of activity will be. It varies from week to week and month to month. Since the last amendment, we had a fair number of commercial project plans that were submitted to us. They were primarily commercial. One of them was Chick-fil-A, there was a hotel, there was some gas stations. One of them was a tentative map that's going to be a residential tract. So we really rely on this consultant to respond to the ebb and flow of the plan and map check activity, and it allows us to be more responsive, more timely, and that's why I would recommend continuing to use this service. But it's hard to predict at the beginning of the fiscal year how much their contract amount should be. So from time to time, we may have to amend the contract when there's more activity. Another thing I'd like to point out is their fee is 65% of what we collect. So it's a revenue positive. The other 35% the city retains.
Thank you. And then the following question is, does the city have educational credits or enhancements for staff in the engineering department?
There is a tuition reimbursement where someone can take a course or a class if it aligns with their job duties. So they always have that opportunity, and some people have taken that opportunity.
And how many employees are in the city engineers department?
If I recall, I think there are 37 full-time positions in this table of work, and a number of those are maintenance staff. They're not all office staff.
And then you mentioned something about a surveyor and the assistant, and then a particular full-timer. Is it not in their purview to take something of this manner now? Because there's a recommendation for us to go external.
We've been utilizing HR Green for several years now. The improvement plan and map check activity is too great for our in-house staff to handle, so we need a consultant to help with the overflow activity. It goes above and beyond what we're capable of.
Okay, and my final question is, has the city used a measure such as some kind of measurement trends over the years to see how contracting during certain periods of time may not be feasible, but maybe another type of settlement, and that's a wrong term, but any other kind of contract? Because if we're using this for several years, have we ever just looked at the analysis of what it would be the cost benefit of having something at a trend at a certain time of the year, if that were possible at all.
We analyzed the, using a consultant years ago, comparing it to in-house staff. It wasn't a highly detailed analysis, but we did look at that, and we thought it would be wise to not increase our in-house staff too much, because we'd experienced some severe downturns before, especially after the Great Recession, and we went through a request for proposal process to select consultants for this several years back. HR Green has continued to perform well and respond well, and their costs they're comparable with other consultants. So we recommend continuing to use that service for this fiscal year.
Thank you for your response. I have no further questions.
I have none. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Rita, do you have anything?
No. So thank you.
I think it's understood that if we don't have a lot of development or there's a downturn, you have no plans. If you have no plan check, you collect no fee. If you collect no fees, there's no work for them to do.
Correct.
We don't pay them. An employee we pay all the time. But in this, unless there are plan check fees from the developer, they don't get paid.
That is correct.
So we don't have to backfill or pay anything out of our general fund or take money away from other services. It comes all from the people who bring plans to the counter for plan checking for development purposes.
Yes.
Thank you.
Other questions? Have any speaker cards? None? So at this time, I do request a motion and a second for item 11.
Madam Mayor, I request that the council approve. I make a motion we approve staff recommendation as it relates to this request.
Second.
I have a motion by Councilmember Cox, and I believe I heard Councilmember Jones as a second.
We both did at the same time.
Don't stay.
Take a roll call vote. Councilmember Cox,
Yes.
Councilmember Gomez,
Aye.
Councilmember Jones,
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Ramirez,
Aye.
Mayor Garcia.
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously.
Now we move on to item 12, cooperative agreement with HDSI for Fire Access Road. Madam Clerk, read the recommendation, please.
That the Water District Board approve the cooperative agreement by and between the Victorville Water District and HDSI and authorize the city attorney to make non-substantive revisions to the agreement if required.
Thank you. Any questions by council members? 3 minutes. Jim Cox?
I have no questions. Thank you.
No, thank you.
Not for this item. Thank you, madam.
No, nothing.
I don't have anything either. Do we have any speaker cards? None. At this time, I need a motion and a second for item 12.
Yes, Madam Mayor, I move that the Water District Board take action in accordance with points 1 and 2 on the agenda on the recommendation.
Second.
I have a motion by Councilmember Jones, seconded by Mayor Garcia. Any further comments? Roll call vote. Councilmember Cox?
Yes.
Councilmember Gomez?
Aye.
Councilmember Jones?
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Ramirez?
Yes.
Mayor Garcia?
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously.
Item 13, purchase of external meter antennas for the Advanced Metering Infrastructure AMI project. Madam Clerk, read the recommendation.
That the Water District Board of Directors approve the purchase of external meter antennas from Ferguson Water Works in the amount not to exceed of $650,000 to allow for an advanced metering infrastructure to be developed.
Thank you. Any questions from council members at this time? Ms. Jones?
No, thank you, Madam Mayor.
Mr. Cox?
I have no questions. Thank you.
Ms. Ramirez? Ms. Gomez?
Yes, so there's an upgrade for water meter antennas, right? So here, and it was said that somehow for some type of infrastructure. So I'm just going to presume infrastructure is related to the city, but is there a more specific way that you can change the language for the understanding of what this project is, and is it part of the CPI, the capital improvement project?
Madam Mayor and members of the council, yes, this is a part of the CIP, which is the Capital Improvement Program for the Water District, and is also included as a part of the rate planning process and the master planning process for the Water District. Advanced metering infrastructure is the actual name. It's not something we made up. It's the actual name of the type of system that we're evolving to. And I use the word evolving because I think the story that's worth hearing is the evolution in how we've read meters to actually where we're headed with this particular item. And you'll recall many years ago, of course, you had a meter reader that would drive around and go to each individual property and lift the lid and look at the measurements on the meter, write it down, and do that for neighborhoods throughout neighborhoods of the city, and then bring them back to the city, write them down, put them into our system, and then that would connect to the billing program, and then bills would go out based upon the changes over month to month to establish the bill. We had and we currently have in place throughout the entire city what's called AMR, which is Advanced Meter Reading. And effectively, and you may notice a disc now that is on the water meter cover that's out in your front yards. And that disc is a radio disc that allows now the meter reader to drive by and eliminates having to get out and individually check each meter, but now allows to drive by and with a handheld device picks up the reads as that person is driving by. This technology, this AMI technology, takes us to the next step where effectively, if you can imagine on our water reservoirs as an example throughout town, we'll actually use those higher point elevations throughout the city, and we'll actually install antennas on top of those tanks to where then we can start reading meters remotely as opposed to having the driver drive through and wand effectively the meters in the neighborhoods. So it'll allow us to have much more real-time transfer of data between, say, City Hall and the individual residential meter out in the community. And it'll also allow us, and it'll also allow the customer to be able to see in real time as we implement this, their actual consumption. So it'll help us from a water conservation standpoint to be able to identify the peaks and valleys of individual water consumption. And for example, in my personal case at home, if I were to look at my trend and I saw water consumption at say 2 o'clock in the morning, that might give me an indication that I've got an issue unless I've set my sprinklers for 2 o'clock in the morning, which I don't do. But it's something that it's really taken our meter reading program to the next level to get more real-time data so that we can identify any issues much more sooner as opposed to later. So this item is taking us to that next step. The author of this item is our Public Works Director and Water Director, Doug Matthews. I may have over embellished and maybe sounded too excited in illustrating the program, but Mr. Matthews is certainly available to answer any questions or comments you have on the more technicals associated with this infrastructure program.
My next question is the allowance of the external meter antenna part of the schedule of fees that was adopted by this council? And does that include the water increases that is expected shortly by the resident water consumers?
Yes.
Thank you. No further questions.
I don't have any questions myself. Do we have any speaker cards? Speaker card? Or did you want to speak? Okay.
On the automation of the reading of the gas meters, the $650,000 is going to be spent on that technology. Are there any people going to be laid off out of work that we're going house to house, what impact is that going to have on the city? How many people are going to be let go? Or they're going to be absorbed into something else? That's just my question. If it merits that technology, and what's going to happen to those people that were actually reading those meters? How many people are going to be disposed? Thank you.
Well, I did ask the same question.
Madam Mayor, and we do have an answer to that question. I will clarify that this is for our water system, not for our gas system. But as we've developed this program, that was also a question I had, and I've been working with Mr. Matthews fairly closely on that. And I'd like Mr. Matthews to articulate the vision that we have. I mean, to answer the question directly, there will not be layoffs directly associated with the use of the technology effectively to lessen the need for these employees. But there is plenty of work, as you'll hear from Mr. Matthews, system-wide, to where we can actually transition these folks into other roles.
Yeah, thank you. So we haven't read meters every day for a little while now since we've had the AMR system. And effectively, we've utilized these workers to do other things within the district that help us, is things like water audits, and to be able to go out and test meters is a big thing. We have 35,000 meters and we're required to test them, and that would entail pulling the meters and going and get them tested. So we have a program to do that, to ensure we have good accuracy on those meters. You know, as well as they can go out and help turn valves, exercise valves, flush hydrants. There's a multitude of things we have for them to be able to do out there. So certainly not sitting idle. One of the big reasons, though, to have a good sized meter staff is just the sheer amount of turn-offs and turn-ons we get every month. So in order to handle that within a day, you need bodies to go out there so that you can get them shut off early in the morning and be there to turn them back on in the afternoon when they pay.
Yeah, would you further explain turn-off, turn-ons? I know there's a lot of them, but I don't think everybody really fully appreciates what that entails.
Sure, so.
And why?
Yeah, when somebody doesn't pay their bill, obviously, and they get multiple notifications, the only way to really get their attention is to turn the meter off, and we let them know, and they have ample notice. So on that morning, we could have 100 or more water meters, whether they be residential or commercial, to go out and turn off. And as soon as people get turned off, they get the notification, they call us, and usually they'll pay, or maybe they forgot, or maybe something's going on where we can work with them. But at that point, you know, once they pay or make some type of arrangement with us, then we need to get them turned back on so they have water for the evening. So like I said, you go out and turn off that many, you got to turn around and go turn them back on in the afternoon.
Yeah, I have another question. I've been interacting a lot with the business community, and one of their complaints is that the city of Victorville brings in the water and the trash together, and if they don't pay one, both of them get cut off. And they wanted to know what is a viable solution, and I don't know if bringing in these technologies would alleviate some of that. I don't know. Is there a solution in terms of the technology to help our business owners?
I do know it's a combined bill, so if they're late on their bill and they don't pay their bill, it results in a water shutoff. Because it's all part of one bill.
Yeah, thank you.
Did you have any questions?
No, ma'am.
At this time, I do need a motion and a second for item 13.
Madam Mayor, I move that the council approve staff recommendation on item 13.
Second.
I have a motion by Councilmember Cox, seconded by Councilmember Jones. Any further comments?
Yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and say a comment. I probably shouldn't, but I will. I have interacted with a lot of business individuals, and their number one complaint is, especially if they're restaurants. So I visit a lot of restaurants, and their main thing is they have to be able to, use a lot of water when they're producing food. And since we have this COVID-19, and we have a lot of our restaurants doing a lot of the delivering of the foods in terms of letting our community eat, when we do cut off those, the bill for the water or for the trash, let's say they didn't pay the trash, they're trying to seek a solution that the city of Victorville does not bring those two things together, because the water and the trash shouldn't be one. And that's a complaint that I've heard year after year. I don't know if the city has addressed or will continue to look into it, but as a council member, I feel responsible for receiving these notices in terms of complaints, and they're afraid to come to the city for whatever reason, and I don't feel I should be the one to face administration, which I do, and it butts heads. So I don't want to be put in that position, but as a council member, I feel that I've been placed there. So how are we addressing that?
I will say that water shutoffs to our commercial establishments and restaurants, and of course anything like a hospital or anything like that, or a nursing home, just don't happen or are extremely rare. We go out of our way to work with these businesses to keep them open. We don't want to shut them off. I mean, that's not our intent. We just want them to pay their bills. So we work with them. I mean, it's not very often you'll see a restaurant shut off. I don't even really remember when it's been shut off, to be quite honest with you.
Thank you.
Madam Mayor, I'm sorry, I do have a comment, may I? So, going back to the motion before it is for the purchase of the antennas, and I certainly can appreciate the concerns of business members. Perhaps that would have been most appropriately dealt with in a request for an agenda item to discuss those things. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
I have a motion by Councilmember Cox, seconded by Councilmember Jones. Roll call vote. Councilmember Cox?
Yes.
Councilmember Gomez?
Aye.
Councilmember Jones?
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Ramirez?
Aye.
Mayor Garcia?
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously.
Now we move on to item 14, Victorville City Council Policy and Procedures Manual. Madam Clerk, read the recommendation.
That the City Council consider and, if acceptable, adopt revisions to the City Council Policy and Procedures Manual pursuant to Resolution Number 20-055.
Thank you. Ms. Ramirez, you want to present this item?
Yes, I'm very pleased with the writing of the procedure. There's only one consideration that I would like the city council members to consider. In the very last sentence on page 3, it says, if such consensus is not gained after the, and this is where I would change the third to the second, because I think that the election or the appointment of the mayor, Mayor Pro Tem, should be within a month. Other than that, that is my only revision that I see, that there is a need. The actual council election and governance, section 2, found in chapter 2, is in my mind, and in my personal opinion, complete. So the only possible change that I would give is that I think that the third consecutive council meeting is prolonging it, and that it would be better and quicker for the city council and the running of the city itself to be done within a month's time, 4 weeks, and that would be changing the third to the second. That's my only question that I have that I would like everyone else to consider.
Thank you.
Clarification, paragraph, where are we at? I understand the statement, I just don't know where it's at here.
Page
What page was it?
277, I believe.
Page 3, it's the last sentence in the section part 2 of council election and governance. It's the very last sentence. It says, if such consensus is not gained after the, and this is where I would say
Okay.
the second consecutive council meeting during which one or more appointments were considered, the city mayor and or mayor pro tem, as applicable, should remain in office until the next annual organizational meeting. That is my only consideration that I would want the city council to consider changing. Everything else seems to me to be perfectly fine.
Okay, thank you, Rita. Okay, questions, Mr. Cox?
No, I have no questions. So it would read after the second consecutive council meeting, and that's just wanted the clarification. I have no questions or comments, so thank you.
I do, and not really a question, but just responding to what our Mayor Pro Tem has said. I'm fine either way with after the third consecutive council meeting or the second. I prefer the third only because I think we need to, it's not a mechanism, I think, to delay the process by any means, but rather an expression of the importance of whoever the sitting mayor and mayor pro tem are, have the full confidence of the council, and that comes by way really of consensus and not by default. So I would always go for the extra time so that we could make sure that our mayor and our mayor pro tem enjoy the confidence of the full council.
Yeah, so in listening to my colleagues, it's portions that I agree and disagree. So I would disagree to go to the third and keep it on the second, just because there's state law that would allow, if something were to happen, which like it has. Rita's not here for medical reasons. If she weren't here for participating with us for 3 consecutive terms, you can challenge her seat and possibly, oust her. And I think when we do some kind of combinations at city policies, that really packs up and scaffolds in things that could be ill-willed. Those are strategies and methodologies that I've looked at with policies and what happens to other cities, and they've been impacted. So I don't want this city of Victorville to be one of those that kind of underhandedly does one of those things, and I think there's a potential for that, especially if you know a lot of the government code sections that would allow you to pack this and have someone ousted because they haven't been here three times, and that would really impact. So this is how I look at what is being asked. The other thing is, I wouldn't want 4 out of 5, and I don't know if Rita wants 4 out of 5. I didn't hear that in her comment, but I'm reading it here, is to delete 4 out of 5 people. In terms of the voting, it would be instead 3 out of 5. And then I do agree with the default. I think that's something that just should happen. It didn't last time because I actually said I was going to vote, and I voted, and everything skewed differently. For whatever reason, it just happened the way it did, and a lot of people were upset. A lot of people were happy. So by default, I think we expect someone to be representing us at the mayoral seat, and I think that's a way to have it handled. So my question for Rita was, does she not agree with 4/5, or she does? I don't know. I feel like she didn't talk about that anymore.
Rita, did you hear?
Somewhat.
So I think I can actually answer that. The 4/5 has already been eliminated, so that's not part of what's before us now. That's already been stricken in the new proposed language. The council at our last meeting, when we took this up, agreed that wouldn't be part of it, so it's necessarily not part of this. And then if I could just continue quickly, I believe that my colleague is conflating 2 issues. Missing 3 meetings is handled differently by law for different reasons. In terms of policy on the council, the sitting mayor is the sitting mayor until such time that the sitting mayor is no longer appointed or gets it by default. So you don't automatically lose it. Same with the mayor pro tem position. So there's certainly nothing underhanded here. I can't imagine that our attorney would bring us something that would allow the council to be just overtly underhanded with one another in its practice. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
We have a motion on the floor?
Not yet, Rita.
Okay.
Have a speaker right now.
Hello. It seems like this thing is dragging on and on and on. I'm going to turn 60 pretty soon, and we're still not going to be able to finish with this thing. One of the items that I've noticed that they've stricken is it's good that the mayor can be reelected. What I don't agree with is that the new mayor can decide who's the city clerk. Who's the city clerk? He decides who the mayor pro tem is. If the mayor decides to go that route, that's in the wording right there. Well, no? Okay. It says right here on page 62 of 68. Right here, the city clerk opens up, clerk closes. If an appointment confirms, the newly appointed mayor shall preside over the process of the office of mayor pro tem, unless he or she prefers the city clerk to facilitate an appointment. What does that mean? What does that mean?
I'm happy to
It appoints
respond
the
unless
person.
the attorney wishes to.
I can tell you, but that wouldn't be my role to tell you.
Okay,
I can respond to that. Essentially facilitate the process of
my time
appointment.
stops. Go ahead.
Oh, sorry. The
Go
city
ahead.
clerk facilitating the process of appointment is similar to the mechanism that the city clerk plays here when we call a roll call vote. She seeks a motion, she seeks a second, and then does the roll call vote to determine it. The person who would still appoint the mayor pro tem as well as vote on the appointment of the mayor pro tem would be the individual council members. It would just be presided over by the city clerk, much the same way as every resolution is here.
Yeah, I'm reading it just a completely different matter, different way, completely. I'm saying it says that the mayor decides where the city clerk wants to decide the appointment by the city clerk to have her. That's how I read it. So maybe the wording needs. Well, I just live here and I vote here, so I'm just saying that needs to be clarified, because you put one lawyer into it, they can make, they can confuse everything, and after 3 times, if it goes to stalemate, the only thing I noticed that they changed is the persons can nominate themselves. You don't need to second it. After reading it twice, the 68 pages, I didn't read the book. I didn't have time for that. But I did read this twice, and I did notice one of the main changes was that the person can nominate themselves. I think it's kind of redundant to wait for a stalemate 3 times for 3 weeks of 3 meetings, a month and a half. I was thinking just maybe in the first time, maybe you get a stalemate, have the sitting mayor keep going. And 1-year term, the next mayor can say, you know what, I want 4 years. So they can change it, so it doesn't really matter. But I'm just saying the wording here, to me, it struck me that way. So that's how I see it. That's just Joe Voter says it and read it. Thank you.
Thank you. Was that the only speaker? This one does require a motion, right? Okay, I do need a motion and a second on this item. Item 14. Rita, it was your motion, so, your item.
But
Yes, I'd like to make the motion to revise the last sentence to read, in such a consensus is not gained after the second consecutive council meeting during which one of the more appointments were considered, the sitting mayor and or mayor pro tem, as applicable, shall remain in office until the next annual organizational meeting. Just to revise the number 3rd to the number 2nd vision that I'm asking in the motion to be considered.
Thank you, Rita. We understand.
Second?
I just want clarification. It's very difficult to hear. It's a low voice, and then I personally interpret stuff with verbiage also distinctly, like Mr. Romero does. Words are very important. So it's my understanding that she would like, if during the meeting when we meet to elect or appoint or whatever word you want to use that's already in the policy, we have the mayor and mayor pro tem, but for whatever reason that person that's in that position does not get reelected or appointed, whatever you want to call it, then we will go to the second meeting of that same month, or we will just default and it would go through the entire year. That's right there the little confusion that I have. We're going to go to a second meeting, or is it automatically, okay, nobody can choose, nobody did choose, there's no majority, let's go and it's another year. That's what I wasn't understanding for her motion. So if you can clarify that motion.
Rita, you want to repeat your motion?
Motion is to revise the last sentence to read, if such a consensus is not gained after the second consecutive council meeting during which one or more appointments were considered, the sitting mayor and or mayor pro tem, as applicable, shall remain in office until the next annual organizational meeting, revising as written to the second consecutive council meeting. That is the revision.
Thank you for that clarification. So I'll go ahead and second her motion.
I have a motion by Mayor Pro Tem Ramirez, seconded by Councilmember Gomez. Any further comments? I'll take a roll call vote. Councilmember Cox?
Yes.
Councilmember Gomez?
Aye.
Councilmember Jones?
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Ramirez?
Aye.
Mayor Garcia?
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously.
Now we move on to item 15.
Oh, wait,
Oh.
clarification, if I can. Unless I'm reading this wrong, before we adopt this policy, we had to vote on the change. We voted on the change, but included in the motion was not for the adoption.
Correct, and I almost brought that up, but it should be. We should do it properly.
I could read it into the record.
Oh, we don't. All we have to do is say that we accept the changes as presented in Chapter 2, with the exception of changing that word third to second, and adopt the resolution with that correction.
Okay, now I'm getting confused. We need to stabilize what's happening here, because this is the underlying understanding of Ms. Gomez. And it just, if we have a motion and we passed it, what's wrong with it? Should Rita claim what she wanted and add this caveat? Because I didn't second what is being added to the record right now.
So, Madam Mayor, may I? Okay, so when, respectfully, when Mayor Pro Tem was presenting this, she was saying that she was in agreement with all of it, but that she wanted to make the change in that last paragraph from the word third consecutive to second consecutive. So the council approved that, but the council didn't take action with the rest of the recommendation, which was that we adopt the resolution with regard to all of the changes.
Well, isn't it incumbent because we're approving an item that's before us?
No, because the motion was just to simply modify that particular word in the text.
So then should the motion have included the verbiage recommend and all her read that and then add that caveat of the changes? Because we do this all the time.
I don't know that you have to, if I could, Madam Mayor. Yeah.
If I may, the change can be read into the record, and then the council may approve that resolution as amended by Mayor Pro Tem Hernandez or Ramirez.
Well, then I'm going to take the time right now and just rescind that second motion, because I just don't like how it's right now, how it's working out. So I'm voting no. I'm rescinding. I had said yes. My right to rescind is no.
Attorney, what are the suggestions?
I believe Councilmember Gomez has rescinded her second for that motion. However, there is still a motion on the table. If there is another second, we can proceed with vote.
actually, since it's been rescinded, I'll make a substitute motion and we can clear it all up. Madam Mayor, I move a substitute motion that the council adopt the resolution as posted on the agenda, that we accept the language as amended, that we accept the language on the yes, thank you. That we accept the language in the final paragraphs of Chapter 2, with the exception that in the final paragraph, the word third consecutive becomes second consecutive, and that the resolution be amended accordingly.
So what is the motion?
I just made it.
You're not saying what Rita had said. That's why I'm confused. But anyways, we just call for the vote. I mean, this is what I don't like. This is underhanded. Do you understand? Anyways, I've said enough.
I
Was
will
the
second
for the
that
vote.
motion. And in fact, I may have seconded the last one. You never know what is in a council person's mind when they make the motion, and the motion was so specific to amend the language and excluded adopting this that I didn't know if there was an intent to do that or not. But since the motion was made and it's on the record and now we're clarifying it, it's now to amend the language and adopt. And that's what I second, and I think that was the intent, but it does clarify the record.
I have a motion by Councilmember Jones, seconded by Councilmember Cox. Any further comments? Roll call vote. Councilmember Cox?
Yes.
Councilmember Gomez?
Nay.
Councilmember Jones?
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Ramirez?
Yes.
Mayor Garcia?
Yes.
Motion passes with Councilmember Gomez voting no.
Now we move on to item 15. Request to the governor to delay and reconsider the implementation of Title 14 of the California Code of Regulations, Section 15064, 3, the analysis of transportation impacts by vehicle miles traveled, VMT. Madam Clerk, read the recommendation.
That the City Council adopt Resolution number 20-033 requesting that the governor extend the implementation Title 14 of the California Code of Regulations, Section 15064.3 for at least 1 year in order to allow for the Governor's Office of Planning and Research to develop and implement a more equitable solution to analyzing transportation impacts and authorize the immediate transmittal of said resolution to the Governor's Office.
Thank you. Any questions from council members? I'll start with Mr. Cox, 3 minutes.
Well, I have a comment. I don't know where it's appropriate to.
Well, right now it's questions.
Well, this, I think it was 2013 when the state legislature adopted the vehicle miles traveled as a requirement for the assessment of the environmental impacts. And with some grants and other things, virtually all the cities moved forward because the law requires that the cities have this adopted by July 1, and we now have done that. Because of the pandemic and all the negative economic consequences that have gone along with that, some of the cities have said that they need at least a year, and others have requested 2 years before this goes into effect, because as one of the council members, I believe Ms. Gomez, said, so much of it is theory without actual data, which is absolutely true. And that almost reigns supreme on all environmental issues. And so until somebody makes a recommendation for a development or makes a request and staff begins analyzing it, then and only then can you relate to that particular development on vehicle miles traveled. It doesn't affect the rest of the city. It doesn't affect any other development. It's an evaluation of that particular development. Other thing that has become apparent and recognized by the Transportation Commission is that location is everything. Because of the number of people that leave the Victor Valley that drive to work, vehicle miles traveled is going to be far greater. And other than a city, say in the LA Basin, where they drive a short distance, the other questions that have come up, this is going to apply when you evaluate the development Same as the city makes a determination of the size of the water line, size of sewer line, the width of the street. But they change if all of the people who live there have local jobs and those jobs close their doors, and then they all travel to LA. The vehicle miles traveled that have analyzed and the city has made a determination, then suddenly, from no fault of our own or no action of the council, is totally wrong. But there isn't any other way to do the evaluation because it's done. So some cities have said to the representatives, which there's a letter from elected representatives, we adopted it, we followed the law, we have complied with the state legislature, we've complied with the guidelines, but implementing this is going to be a bear. And there ought to be some standards from the legislature that accompanied this legislation, and there was not, as I understand it. So it's, initially then it was determined that every single city is going to be different. And in order not to do that, transportation agencies, and I think the city of Victorville joined other cities, they have come together, and the vehicle miles traveled requirements that have been adopted are similar.
Your time is up.
Then I'm not going to tell you the rest. They're similar, but still there needs to be time to really analyze after it's in effect. So the request from the county transportation and every individual that's a member of county transportation is to request the state to wait at least 1 year and hopefully 2 before the state requires the implementation.
Councilmember Cox, please respect your time.
No, thank you, Madam Mayor.
Yes, so I didn't want to be rude to you. You're older than I am, but I just
Just
get
a little
knocked all
bit.
the time about it, and I try to say it so kindly. So excuse me if it sounded rude, but I get knocked all the time with Miss Jones calling me out on things that I'm not supposed to be saying in my time. So I just wanted to make sure that she knew that she needs to keep tabs on you. But regardless, so yeah, I have a couple of questions on this one. So we just approved an item for, I think it was Green Consulting, I believe, if that's the case, but a consultant because we need more mapping services and so forth. And I'm looking here at an extension for 1 year. How did we come up with 1 year? What does it mean to have an equitable solution? An equitable solution is so vague. Does staff have any narrowly tailored details to come up with what an equitable solution would be? And what would be the cost benefits of saving if we were to do this in 1 year implementation versus a more prolonged or more shortened length? And finally, here we're depending that the Inland Empire residents depend on cars to get to their jobs. I don't think that's anything new. We are considered a bedroom community with the majority of our community traveling down the hill. And so we haven't addressed that in terms of getting more roads so that we are as congested. And if the pandemic caused any dramatic changes, I mean, we don't have more drivers. I think we have less drivers on the road. So I don't understand why we didn't have a workshop if this was such a big deal. I feel that it's just here. Can you help me? I mean, I don't have a rationale why I should vote for a recommendation that is coming right now and we have 2 items. So I want to understand more.
Madam Mayor and members of the council, the answers to the 2 questions I heard in there, the answers are no, and the cost benefit are unknown at this time, and that has a lot to do with I think the uncertainty as to exactly how this is going to shake out in terms of actual cost of mitigation to the developer. And I think one of the latest things that's driving the request, notwithstanding what we did in item number 10, which was comply with the law to have our VMT in place and approved by July 1st. That notwithstanding, there's a lot of uncertainty, especially as it relates to the impacts of COVID, and it is in fact believed that driving patterns have changed, and is it the most appropriate time right now to be implementing that? And I think that's really kind of the one of the focuses behind the request that has come in at the request of the BIA. but is also something that I've been advised has been discussed and deliberated at the County Transportation Authority and unanimously approved. And I think the city's approach, ours along with our colleague cities, has been we're going to comply with the law as we're doing in number 10 by getting this in place, but there's a belief that it doesn't hurt to ask for the extension as to the effective date for the implementation, and if there is a granting by the governor to provide that extension, it'll allow us to perhaps decide with a little bit more knowledge about the actual numbers at a more appropriate time.
And then my other question, I don't know that I can favorably vote for the recommendation that's staffed in the discussion. I know the BIA, particularly its members, are very partisan, so to have described this as a bipartisan letter and being within those groups just really gives me the desire to know why didn't we delve into this more if it was a greater discussion. Because if the BIA is a lobbying group, we have a lot of lobbying groups right here in front of us, but we don't use those powers unless they're benefiting a status quo. So I can't go with a recommendation that doesn't have any validity into what I've encountered time after time, not only with the individual group members, but knowing that it's very bipartisan. I mean, I wish we would have had a much greater discussion that would have had more of why I could vote for something like this, because I believe staff, but then I have this thing like, I'm just getting this thrown to me, SB 73, what does it mean, how does it look, what is VMT, you know, I'm curious. I know there's good heart in it from staff, I read into it, but there's more things underlying that it's just, I can't, and it's very difficult.
Yes, I don't know how I need to. This wasn't initiated by staff. The request wasn't initiated by staff. And the reason that it was initiated by County Transportation and several other agencies is there is a strong belief that the theories that were used to adopt the law have changed with the pandemic, and that if you did the studies today on the miles driven, it would be totally different. And no one's going to know until it's been into effect for several months. Some believe up to a year, some 2 years. And if it's true that it makes a difference, it's all got to be redone. So the request is, why implement it? What's the importance of implementing it when everything may have changed, all the data may have changed? It still goes into effect. It doesn't relieve any agency from not implementing it and using it, except the state does not enforce it for the year, for giving everyone a chance to look at. That's the request. That's the only request.
Rita, do you have anything?
No, ma'am.
I don't have anything either, so do we have any speaker cards?
Romero Rodriguez.
I think they should have put 10 and 15 together. It looks like we put on our shoes and now we want to put on our socks. So it doesn't really, it's not clicking. Thing is, right now we want to put this in the back burner for a year. The thing is, there was no fiscal impact in the beginning when you want to implement this, but when you start implementing, how much is it going to cost? Nothing comes for free. You're going to go from level of service to vehicle miles traveled. How is this going to be assessed? Is it going to be a questionnaire to all the people that live here? A census? Or are we going to outsource it to a company and pay them $5 million a year to find out, you know, what people do? So that's the question. Is it going to have a cost, or are we going to use it internally with our own people that work here, determine exactly the people where they work, where they drive, their habits? That's, to me, it's a questionnaire. It's going to take time. How are you going to find out? How do I know where you go, Mr. Cox, after you leave here? Do you go to Circle K? Do you go to Pepe's? Do you go to? How are we going to find out? That's the question we're having right here. So is it going to be a consulting service? Like, are we going to pay to come to that? So why are we putting in the back burner? What is the initial cost going to be of this? Because we're going back and forth. Yes, we want it. No, we don't want it. But what is going to be the actual cost? How is it going to be achieved? That's the thing the question. That's a $64,000 question that hasn't been asked. No one's asked it. Thank you.
They're good questions, but it doesn't affect you or I unless you're moving into a new development that requires an environmental assessment. So this is not a law that the state legislature passed that says we're going to question all the citizens of Victorville.
Exactly.
It doesn't have anything to do with that. It's only if there's new development, and it's a part of the environmental assessment, which is how you determine the roads for the new development, the size of the water, how many garbage pickups, width of sidewalks, the drainage. There's an assessment that you go through for that new development, and this is for new development. It's part of the environmental assessment. And they believe, and of course it's theoretical, but they believe when they come up with this bill, the attempt, quite frankly, was to urge people or help people to move closer to work so there would be less miles traveled, much less miles traveled. That was the intent. And of course, the state said you will implement it. It's implemented. Council had to implement it. It didn't make any difference whether we agreed or not. We had to implement it. Staff did the work. It's done. It's implemented, effective July 1. What happens when you have a state law that you don't follow, the state legislature then have agencies that have an enforcement division that comes down and says, City X, you're not implementing the law, and we require you to do it, and there's penalties if you don't. What all the cities in San Bernardino County, and I believe Riverside County, and most of the cities in eastern LA County are saying, pandemic changed everything. Businesses are not going to open. Major businesses are moving. We'd like to take another look at this. There's been no request to take it off the books or redo it. The only request is, since we spent 3 or 4 years looking at it, and we believe that all of the factors that make this up, all the pieces of the puzzle, may have dramatically changed, state, don't implement it right now. Let us look at it, and if a development comes in tomorrow, staff will implement this. Because it doesn't make any difference what our request is, it's up to the state whether to grant the year extension or not. If they don't, we implement what was developed in, item 13. If they do grant a year, then I'm sure that the first thing that our staff will do is meet with the staffs for all the other cities and counties and the state and the Transportation Commission to see who's going to look at it and under what circumstances. We did not, the city manager can answer this, but we didn't have a lot of studies and consultants that did it that I know of, and it wouldn't require it this time around either. It'd be the same thing. It'd be in-house. Study will do it. And remember, this is an assessment which the developer pays for. If there has to be a full EIR, the developer pays for. So we don't have any reason to hire consultants to look into this. They have to provide the data. They have to mitigate the number of vehicle miles traveled to reduce the miles traveled. It's not up to us to do that. It's up to them to pay for a study that has to be accepted. And the other cities and the county transportation is saying, at least give us a year or 2 years to work this out. That's the request.
Rita, did I already ask you if you had anything?
Yes, I have nothing to say. Thank you.
Okay, very good. I don't have anything either. So at this time, I do need a motion and a second for item 15.
Yes, Madam Mayor, I move that the council take action in accordance with the recommendations set out on the agenda.
Second.
Good.
I have a motion by Councilmember Jones, seconded by Mayor Garcia. Any further comments?
Yes. So I hear, so effective July 1st. So why are we asking for a 1-year extension? Why are we having this discussion today? The pandemic changed everything, even the $26,000 that were catered to our highest salaried paid employees who were making City Hall projects. and their transportation changed. I don't understand. Thank you.
I have a motion by Councilmember Jones, seconded by Mayor Garcia. Cox?
Yes.
Councilmember Gomez?
Nay.
Councilmember Jones?
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Ramirez?
Yes.
Mayor Garcia?
Yes.
Motion passes with Councilmember Gomez voting no.
Now we will be moving on to public comments. I need to know. So I'll give them 3 minutes.
Keisha?
My dad always told me there was two kinds of people in this world. There are the people that talk about it and the people that do it. The last meeting that I was here, I noticed a lot of talk about a program that the city manager and Jim Cox was talking about putting together in schools to help educate the local students on local government and how it works. I see Blanca doing that here tonight with a lot of young people that came here to learn, and I see her being chastised for it. Where she was actually doing the very thing that you two were talking about at the last meeting. The rules of conduct that I read, based on this human's response interrupting Blanca, watching the mayor yell at her colleague instead of the person in the audience after you made sure to put the rules of conduct on here. I didn't see you support your colleague when someone in the audience was disrespectful. The last meeting.
Excuse me, I will
I
correct
challenge.
you.
It's my time to talk. It's my time to talk.
Oh, I will
the last
correct you.
meeting that I was here, I have 3 minutes. I don't want to extend the time.
give
Now
her
you're
her
interrupting
time.
me. The last meeting, I challenged you for why you put the comments in the beginning instead of at the end. And you wanted everyone to believe that you did that to help everybody. And then during the meeting at the end, you say, this is the problem. People come, make their comments, and leave. Which is it? Was it that you put the comments in the beginning because you wanted people to come and make comments and leave so you could go complain about the fact that people make comments and leave? I mean, it was very confusing. And lastly, I would like to thank the city manager for staying awake this time. I don't know many jobs that you can fall asleep at and not have any sort of apologies or reprimanding. I know people that work in the public sector you have got to stop interrupting me. That's a violation of Brown's Act. It really is. I have seen so many other disruptions up here by you, and you don't say anything. You're a hypocrite, and I'm tired of it, Gloria. I've seen you for years now, and it's embarrassing. No, this is my time. He's not saying anything. You are interrupting my time again. I thank you for proving my point, Madam Mayor.
Stop, I'll ask you to.
Romero Rodriguez?
I completely understand what the last speaker motioned and understand. Many times I've come up here and asked questioned the police department, the city council, and right away, white supremacists behind me start coming up and then challenge me, distorting what I say, belittling me. And that's part of the essence, nuance of this meeting here. Always, it's a white supremacy that comes up. They're not patriots. They're not citizens. They're just coming out to enforce their agenda. That's all it is. That's all we get to see. A lot of people come up here and speak their beliefs, and they don't come back again because they don't have the essence of understanding and comprehending the attacks that they do. They don't come back. You know what? I was really victimized. I was really embarrassed. That person came up here. That person with no shoes was walking up and down, and nobody tells them anything. It makes it seem like they're in control. They're power. They walk around. They're asked to leave, and they never get thrown out. And that's one of the things here that happens here all the time. Certain groups of people are allowed other people are chastised. And you know what? That's got to change. We're talking about changing the narrative. No, it's the same thing. We still had the police departments outside last week over there, like gorillas waiting to pounce on everybody. After all that's happening, it's still the same day, different, same stuff, different day. That's all. It's happening. Nothing changes unless we change it. And we can change it by voting. There was no Karens last week here. Nobody stood up here and defended the police department. What happened to all those Karens? That every week they come over and chastise us, to speak our mind and criticize and ask for accountability. And they're going to come up right now and start speaking the little minds and everything. But you know what? You know who you are. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Jesse Lawrence.
I just want to get it out of the way that you're going to silence my snaps, but you're not going to silence him talking over a council member who's taking her time to speak. You see the problem in that at all? Do you also see the problem in that Miss Jones over here literally interrupted Blanca Gomez in the middle of her sentence to talk to Miss Gloria Garcia? She was addressing the people, trying to simplify what you guys are telling us. I want you to know that Blanca Gomez, the people, majority of the people up here, and a lot of people that aren't even from here, love her. And the reason why is because like I told you last meeting, the minorities, the people of color who are the actual majority, she's representing them. She's there for them. When you had your recess, instead of coming out and addressing the people, the youth who's here to understand, instead of addressing us and asking us how we're doing, do you understand what's going on? Are you thoroughly actually reading the agendas? Are you getting it? We represent you. We love you, you the people. Instead of doing that, you stayed in here. Blanca went out there and talked to us, asked us how we were doing, explained the agendas. That is passion. That is somebody who's actually trying to talk to the people. Are you paying attention to what I'm saying, or are you looking at something else? Because I'm talking to all of you. So that's not fair that the people up here that are supposed to be representing the people aren't actually talking to the people. And I just want to leave you with this. Whitney Houston said it best. The children are the future. So when all of these old white supremacists die off pretty soon, we will be the ones standing. We will be the ones in your seat, if not next election when we vote you all out, besides Blanca Gomez. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Paul Marsh.
City Council. Sometimes the truth hurts, and there's a lot of people that they're not looking at truth. I am not one person that's going to talk popularity. I'm going to talk what's necessary. What happened last week was very commendable on your all part. The reason why you put everybody first is to give everybody a chance. Now, what she doesn't tell you, Councilwoman Gomez, for the people, what she doesn't tell us is that she was the instigator of last week. I was angry, and I'm going to tell you why in a minute, okay? The group that was out there protesting, they had 5 designated speakers to come in. Ms. Gomez, she trots across the parking lot, and I guess she saw some cameras because she beelines to where those to the spotlight. This is what the organizers told me, that you were the one that had everybody come in. We could have had maybe just a regular meeting, had five comments, and what they're saying they believe in, I don't dispute that. Okay, what I do dispute is the instigation, you standing up with your power fist, and after the mayor has asked you to put things down, to keep things calm. You have the right to freedom of speech, just like all of us, but you also have a responsibility. And if you can tamp things down and keep things calm, that's your responsibility when emotions are high, instead of egging it on. The police department, they gave those protesters the opportunity to protest in peace. They stood off to the side. Okay, now what I don't understand is, how do you protest prejudice, racism with racism? You had a group of protesters that went over to the police and challenged them. The organizers had to come and pull them away. You have a black police officer. Now you have protesters with Black Lives Matter posters, but yet they're calling a police officer the N-word because he's black. What kind of sense does that make? When you were here, we're sitting in the audience, we have protesters coming up here voicing their opinion, exercising their First Amendment rights. They're talking about you all being old white people. You're white supremacist enablers. Maybe you're a white supremacist yourself. What kind of sense does that make? It makes no sense at all. And it makes no sense, so I'm not going to sit there, and yeah, I don't care about the Facebook crap. I don't care about the repercussions and stuff, because this is not right. You're the one that's wrong. And yeah, we do. The people that pay taxes, I'm going to still talk. I don't listen.
Your time is up.
My time is up. I'm walking back. But listen, you're the instigator. You, goodbye. You don't matter. You don't matter.
Okay.
Robert Harriman.
Oh, Robert Harriman.
Yes.
Okay. Evening. Just a couple things. Just to educate the young man over here, Mrs. Jones did a point of order, which is legal. He can interrupt anybody with a point of order. Excuse me. The $125,000 comment she made accusing the council of hiding money was her being in the wrong location on the agenda. Yeah, she needs to pay attention. The extension that you guys, on item 15, I believe, was specifically because of COVID. We want to extend it. And so because of all the changes. I don't know why people come up here and want to make it sound like we're trying to charge people for something. They need to understand what the VMT is. The school, the lady earlier talked about the school thing. Well, she's not being a very good, she's not good at it up here. She's not following the agenda. She's not reading things. She's just not, it gets confusing when she makes accusations like the city's corrupt, and it's just not her paying attention. I don't know what my race has anything to do with anything. I don't. That gets old. Doesn't make absolutely no sense to me. I'm white. I lived in Victorville for 38 years. I'm at least involved in my community. I just don't get it. I've never made a racial epithet. I don't get where they come up with this. So I'm a little disturbed with that. So I'm here to tell you I am not anything but an American. Okay, that's all I am. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Stella Garcia?
I want to say thank you, Blanca Gomez, for trying to explain these things to us. I just want to say thank you, Blanca Gomez, for trying to explain these things to us, because it is very hard to understand. I just want to say thank you for the rest of you for doing nothing for us. What's it called? What those people were experiencing last time was not racism, it was prejudice. And this is a question for those thugs that have badges that should concern you guys also, because they protect us, right? Where is that black thing now? Where is it now? Are you guys still mourning those people that died from COVID? Because you guys only seem to mourn them when it's protests. That's all.
For all the cards.
This time, I would like our city manager to give us a report.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, members of the council. Illegal fireworks is something that we're focused on. We launched our illegal fireworks campaign in May. Our campaign combines enforcement and public awareness messaging. We've got a campaign slogan, if you light it, we'll write it. We're enforcing the new $1,000 citation approved by the City Council several months ago. So far, we've issued 41 citations and confiscated more than 400 pounds of fireworks. Unfortunately, Victorville Fire has responded to 12 fires believed to be the result of illegal fireworks. We will be ramping up our enforcement efforts actually this week to have expanded enforcement activity. As far as community events, Victorville City Library Reed Squared Summer Reading Program all summer, and it's a free program for all community members. This is Join the 2020 Summer Reading Program. This is a virtual program that allows participants to unlock badges, mini games, and earn additional points by completing missions with hundreds of prizes to win. You can find out more information at www.vcl.readsquared.com. We have a live remote learning class on residential water leak detection. That's Thursday, June 25th, 6 p.m. to 7 p.m. It's a Zoom call, so be able to do it electronically. A virtual learning opportunity that will help participants identify common indoor and outdoor water leaks. And then also we've got our 4th of July fireworks spectacular. That's Saturday, July 4th. San Bernardino County Fairgrounds fireworks there should start at 9 p.m. It's a free event. High Desert residents are invited to enjoy the spectacular fireworks display put on by the City of Victorville at the San Bernardino County Fairgrounds. And that's all I have at this time.
Thank you very much. Now we move on to discussion and possible action regarding upcoming agenda items. Mr. Cox, do you have anything to agendize?
I'm sorry. Are we having a meeting, the first meeting in July?
Let me look at the calendar. Sorry.
I didn't look on. Sometimes we do, sometimes we don't. 4th of July is coming
The
up.
first meeting in July, I would say yes. The way it falls this time is that the first meeting in July would be on the 7th. Many times we do cancel the first meeting in July when that first meeting is really close to the actual holiday itself.
No, that's all. Thank you very much.
And not this time, probably I will the next meeting. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Yes. I'd like to see if we can agendize a full discussion based on SB 73 that's related specifically to VMT and its impacts to the city of Victorville, to be agendized no later than 30 days from today's date, and to provide a notice to the public of 96 hours in advance. That's my motion.
Is there a second? There being no second, that motion dies.
The second one is only obvious to everyone, but I will state it. We have a group of individuals who feel very passionate about talking about the racial makeup of our police officers, particularly in the city of Victorville, because we do contract with San Bernardino. So my motion is to bring in a full detail of the makeup of our police force in the county, particularly the city of Victorville, to be agendized no later than 30 days from today's date, and to provide a 96-hour notice to the public so that our participants can be full-fledged in what is happening in that racial makeup. Thank you.
Is there a second? There being no second, a motion dies.
I have nothing else to agendize.
Rita, did you have anything to agendize?
No, thank you.
I don't have anything either. So this time it's reports from council members. Mr.
I do not. Thank you very much.
Yes, I do. Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just so that the record is very clear with regard to the the racial makeup of our officers here in Victorville, the council did take that item up last year, and that information was provided to the council at that time. Couple meetings ago, I made some comments to really highlight how this council works together and some of the to and fro texts between council members. And I missed reading one, I think partly because I just was afraid I was going to run out of time, but I do want to take just a moment to share that now tonight because it does relate to our mayor. And this is what I had intended to speak out that night. As for our mayor, we both understand the biblical importance of being reconciled one to the other. I trust we both value restoration. She is no different from other council members. When we have differences of opinion, we move on. I have always loved Gloria Garcia, and nothing has changed that. And I wanted to make sure that I said that so people wouldn't think that I intentionally left out our mayor, because I didn't. The other thing that I am a little grieved about having to mention, but I'm going to because I think that we've had some employees that have been wrongly maligned, and really I think, at least in my mind, amounts to harassment. Professionals know that, and we understand that personnel issues are necessarily confidential. And there's a time and a place for those things to be discussed. And Councilmember Gomez certainly has been trained as to what the appropriate forum is for expressing concerns about employees behind the dais in a public meeting. Really violates our code of conduct. And I'm concerned that this council might need to take some type of a formal position distancing ourselves from those remarks, because we have at least 2 employees here who could certainly say that they're being publicly harassed. And in addition to that, I think it's very important to say that our rules are in place to make meetings more meaningful and to further determine what the decided will of the body is. No one here is being prevented from having a say in matters. No voice is being suppressed. Making a point of order is one means by which a council member can interrupt another when those procedures are being violated. So according to our own policy manual, these rules are intended to enhance public participation and council debate so that the best possible decisions can be made for Victorville. Right? So the ultimate purpose, according to our parliamentary rule, is that the ultimate purpose of rules of procedure is to encourage discussion and to facilitate decision-making by the body. In a democracy, majority rules. Our imperatives...
Your time is up, Councilmember Jones.
Oh, is it?
Yes.
I missed it. My apologies.
Ms. Gomez, do you have anything?
Yes. So I'm really intellectual to say I didn't hear, and that's my comment. Because yeah, everything she's saying right now, it's an attack, obviously. But I'm gonna start off with saying, no, the racial makeup of a police department was not disclosed. I had this discussion with community because that's the number one thing that we were looking for. I went on a ride-along with officer, I think is German. I'm sorry, but he is a great person. I'm naming him because he, to me, is a framework of a model. Okay, that's why I'm naming him. But I realized that when I went on that police ride, we were not able to speak the same language with a Hispanic woman, and she was not able to interject what she needed to do. So if we have officers in the field that cannot speak the language or do not represent our culture that's out there at a majority level, we are doing a disservice. I spoke with a lot of my community members, and I needed to understand the racial makeup, and it was not there. So Councilmember Jones, you're in error in that position, and I'm sorry, that's what I'm calling it, and that's my perception, and I've talked to a lot of people. The second thing that I'd like to address is there is no harassment. I did not harass these two beautiful ladies, but I did bring to the fore that their rudeness and their hostility towards me as a council member trying to address problems for the public is what we need to address. I'm not attacking their personhood. It was the way they addressed as a council member, me as a person with other individuals by my side. I happen to record one of them, okay? So I'm not trying to discredit their character. I'm just saying we need better customer service, period. And I happen to name them because when you get customer service, I'm hoping that they're not gonna treat you that way either. You know, it's gonna change right here. Okay, so yeah, and when I'm talking about Keith Mesler and I give him a 1 rate for being a city manager and I display it publicly, is because that's what I have encountered. My colleagues could have gotten all 5s for him, but I got 1s and 2s. I'm sorry, but the majority is you cater to them. And I'm going to display that, okay? Tomorrow we have a workshop. You don't know about it unless somebody either calls you, texts you, or you get notified. How are you going to know to come to that meeting tomorrow at 11? Unless we're contacting you, right? So another thing that I wanted to state, if my time's up, make sure you let me know, because I don't want to say I didn't hear you. The other thing that I wanted to say, you know what? When you're snapping fingers, there's nothing disruptive of doing that. Nothing. Because when Mr. Harriman was speaking out of his voice, he was not chastised. But someone being chastised for snapping your fingers, you're not doing anything wrong. Okay, I understand it gets personal and it gets very emotive. To ask to remove yourself. I've been asked to remove myself on many occasions. Have I personally done it? No. I've even had Bessinger come up to me and he hasn't even removed me. What I'm trying to say is that we have laws that we can abide by, but we can't overstep our boundaries. And I appreciate the fact that
Your
Mr.
time is up.
Bessinger did not. Thank you.
Rita, do you have anything?
No.
I choose not to. So therefore, this meeting is adjourned.